hear your key
or
list.
pro?
Key.
Lars Staples, Brad Black, Jeannie Fitzpatrick, Tim Carroll, Bill Welch, Josh Jones, Rick Hill, Jeff King, and Dave Furman.
What do some of those folks do? Where do they work?
A lot of them are my partners,
Okay.
and then 2 are internal decision makers, and 1 is a customer.
Okay. What about on your growth side?
Seth Pierce, Joel, Michael Longson, Charles Blankenship, Fred Godley, Mark Bernard, Kyle Lang, Jeff Brown, and Amy King.
Okay. Weatherford, how about yours?
Both sides.
Just give me a key for right now.
All right, Key, Amy King, obviously Pickett, Joel Sosby, Randy Pote, Michael Longsong, Kevin Moore, David Berman, Mike Ramsey, Rick Hill, Barry Lees, and Scott Bartlett.
Who do you guys use to finance deals? Does AppNet finance deals?
Cisco Capital.
Who do you guys use to resell WAN circuits? Who do you partner with to find new MPLS deals?
Windstream.
Delta. It depends.
Try not to.
Really do.
Okay, and that's an okay answer, but
I agree with you too. I don't have any.
no lead generation going back and forth with the WAN providers. We've gone down that path, and you're making a choice not to.
I've been burned.
Okay, fair.
I do some of it with very select individuals within those groups. It's a very informal type, nothing signed between companies.
Okay.
I approach that very cautiously.
Okay, and that's okay. It's we're throwing things out here, right?
Just because that could be a disaster.
What about APC, Leaper, the data center guys? Cooley,
I have
and then
Genie.
How? Right. What about real estate? Knowing when people are moving in, when they're moving out, and what projects are going on.
Yep.
Right. What about any sort of virtualization technology, whether it be Citrix or VMware? I mean, tell me if I'm crazy. What about Colo, P10, Hosted? I know you guys have your own offering there, but do you network with any of those other folks that help you find new opportunities?
Yeah.
And would it be helpful to do so if you don't have them on your list right now? Go ahead, Scott.
Well, let me just ask you a question about this, because I understand what you're saying, and I feel like after doing this a long time, what I put on my key were groups that were actively participating in both directions. And where I have found some struggle is, unlike Cisco, that there's 50,000 different products where I can constantly make an impact, it's difficult to make I think it's important to have those connections to those, really, hey, I know who my VMware rep is, I know who but it's difficult because I'm not bringing them enough business. I'm not going to find a Lever deal once a week. I may not find one for once a quarter. And so I want them to know my name, I want them to know I'm serious, and hopefully they'll at some point realize, he keeps bringing me stuff. But it's difficult, I think, to put them in the key. I think it's a growth area, and anyway, that's just a thought.
I don't disagree with you at all. I think my point is we talk a lot in channel, right? We use the word partners in channel. And it's always kind of assumed, I think, that you are the channel. You're the partner. It's always looked at from a manufacturer standpoint, right? Who are our partners? Who are our channel? What are our channel programs? I think you guys are looking at it the exact same way. Who is your channel? Who are your partners? What's your go-to-market? How do you find new business? Right? How do you go deep and wide? And you have to have certain people that round out your holistic solution here that enable you to find new business. And those folks are often not going to just be the manufacturers that you're almost forced to work with anyway, right? Like us or hate us. You live in East Tennessee, you really don't get a choice if you want to work for Hats or not. It's kind of the way it's going to be. So I think that's what I want to make sure we're understanding here is all the different Brian Slipkas of the world that maybe you don't have to know, have to be in your key, but they're certainly in your growth and they're areas that you want to be cognizant of to find new business. The question is, do you have them down there? Do you know who they are? And then how are you treating them? What is your go-to-market methodology with these folks? Is it a scheduled, maybe it's a once a quarter lunch. To Jason's point, it's an informal breakfast. They meet over coffee once a month, once every other month. I don't know. And again, there's no right or wrong answer to Mike's point. My question is, how does your day, how does your week or your month materialize? Do you show up Monday at 8 and say, this is what's on my calendar today. And Tuesday, this is what's on my calendar today. And I really need to get this stuff done. I need to get this deal done. Or do you have some balance and some understanding of what you want to accomplish over the day, the week, the month, the quarter that gets a little farther outside that one deal you're laser focused on or that one number, right? Can you step back and look at the forest through the trees and understand all these relationships that you have to keep up, that you have to be being at least present, right? Maybe not providing this huge amount of value because I would agree you might not find ABC or Libra once a quarter, but how are you managing the rest of those relationships, specifically the key ones, and which growth are you really trying to invest in? So Trevor, I 100% agree with you that the Paytech relationship has not worked. Time Warner or Hosted or Windstream might be in bed with the ShoreTel guys, right? So where do you go to find another opportunity that can bring you into a new deal? Because every opportunity that you don't have a warm relationship that doesn't walk you in, just means more phone calls you guys have to make, right? We're going to find some customers one way or another. The question is how fast and how much pain is it going to cause us? I think we'd all rather agree, specifically given that your unique value prop is almost to a man centered around you and the personal relationship. So who are you driving those personal relationships with? That's on your bus, and how are you maintaining those? With us, it's gotten to the point where, you guys have probably seen, it's a routinely scheduled event. Right? We have set times where we say, sure, we're going to talk about that hot deal, but we really want to make sure the relationship's on track. Those marketing events are on track. Their organizations are on track. That we're identifying problems as they come up, and we're talking about those long-term goals. Rather than just, here are the 3 hot deals we're working on right now with no foresight as to as soon as these 3 deals are done, our pipeline drops off the map, and we're back to 0. And then you get this. Quarters where you feast, and quarters where you starve. Is what we're all trying to go away from. So this is more of an exercise just to get thinking about who do you need on the bus with you to be key to your success. Maybe you feel like you have enough. Fantastic. Let's go back and relook at how you manage those relationships. How do you manage us? How do you gain mind share with us? It doesn't always have to be the other way around, We don't have to pick our favorite @net rep. Why don't you pick your favorite system?
FaceTime opportunities.
And what's the methodology of that when you're trying to do it across 3 or 4 different companies? And you're balancing a couple Cisco reps, a couple EMC reps, the VMware guy that only shows up for drinks after 5, right? Your internal stakeholders, I think that's key as well. You guys just told me how awesome all your people are. Got the best people, your CEOs and SE. How do you use Jeff? How do you use Joel? David, I heard all of you guys had them on there in different roles. You had your project managers on there, and your SEs. Should be thinking about what does that personal relationship look like? What's the professional relationship look like? Where do you use them to drive your business forward? How do you steal time from them? Right? You want them to be so overly focused on you that they kind of ignore the rest of the group in here, right? You want your unfair share of attention. If you're not doing that, why? Because I'd be willing to bet that I have reps on my team that get an unfair share of my attention because they do certain things really well. And they know how to leverage their resources. And as we came back to the reason we're doing this is we can't be Lone Rangers anymore, right? This is about management through influence and leveraging a sales team, a sales process to move forward, even if we're not necessarily in the room, or we're not necessarily got a thumb on the pulse of it, which is really scary for a bunch of type A sales folks, right, that need to have that commission check right there in their hand. I don't trust anybody else to do it the way I do it. But we kind of have to at this point, especially if we're going to continue to want to make the revenue goals that I think all of us do. So fold that list up, put it somewhere, revise it, keep an eye on it. Just think about what your calendar looks like. How do you use that time effectively? Breakfast, lunch, drinks after work, never eat alone. You guys heard that concept or read that book? These are all opportunities where I think just how you go to market can be reevaluated. It's January. You got a chance to relook at your business plan. If you don't have a business plan, you get a chance to work with Joel to make one, right? Do things a little bit differently. What's the definition of insanity?
Doing the same thing twice, expecting the same results.
Okay? So how much money did you make last year?
I don't know.
There you go. So what are you going to do differently? Make more calls? Go see the same people more?
Work smarter.
Work smarter. So how do we work smarter?
Relationships.
Leverage what you're good at, which is relationships. And having the resources. Yeah, Mike.
It was interesting, we did a territory review yesterday, and one of the analytics that I did of the pipeline that I've got, 54 opportunities in the whole pipeline. One of them, and this goes back to leveraging the bus, one of them was from telephone/email cold calling. 51 of them were either existing accounts that I picked up, we had some stuff, and the rest of them were all networking. My personal, or I used a competitor, Presidio, their telephone division, which won't talk to the other division, which is a nice thing, to help me with the Matt Whitney thing at this bank, where they came in and so now I've got a relationship with them. They're calling me 3 times a week. Let's go have lunch. We're going to be in town, blah, 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 blah. But it was instructive to see that cold calling doesn't work anymore. This kind of stuff, putting people on the bus, having relationships. And I found that getting ahead of that noise comes from having those relationships, including dealing with you guys. I get faster phone calls when I've got something that sticks above the tree line, if you will. I'll get a faster call back from Dave.
How often do you get a no IP approved if you haven't talked to the Cisco account manager? First off. Assuming someone you don't know, right? Jason, you send something into Amy.
0.
Right.
Say what?
If you have not talked to Billy and you send an OIP to Billy, is that going to get approved?
Yeah.
So far, it has.
He's going to call you.
Okay.
If it's somebody that never knows,
Okay, George,
somebody
you
who's
use
never
something
heard
wrong.
of
So let me ask you this: what's the average monthly? I mean, what's an average month look like? What's a quota around the table here? GP. What's an average monthly quota?
35.
30? 35? So we're at 35. Okay. What's the average transaction? You guys ever looked at that and said, "Hey, every time I tend to book a deal, it looks like this." 5K.
Average transaction, company-wide or personal?
That was for me personally.
That's a good question. You guys happen to? I mean, what's an average transaction look like at that day?
Well, I mean, across the board, I mean, it's probably 10K for an average transaction.
Mike, what were you going to say?
Yeah. Mine was 12, but I've got a way too big of an elephant in there that I use.
Okay, so how many of these do we need to hit this in the course of a month?
3.5.